It's the 4th of July weekend, but these two teams facing off, they haven't provided a lot of fireworks. Is there going to be fireworks this weekend? Talk about all that and more this episode of Locked On Rangers and Locked On Padres. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to the Texas Rangers and the San Diego Padres. I'm Brice, Paterik, host of the Locked On Rangers podcast. Joining me today is Javier Reyes, host of the Locked On Padres podcast. We are here talking about this July 4th weekend series, Rangers versus Padres. Will there be beef? Do any of these players even remember Slam Diego and what all is going on this weekend? Before we get into all that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Joining me today is Javier Reyes, the hostess with the mostest host of the Locked On Padres podcast. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, brother. Despite it all, we're still here, and despite it all, we're still talking ball. And in a way, what else could you ask for?
Not much more. I could ask for fireworks. I could ask for a day by the pool. I could ask for a few less late night games on the West Coast. And you know what? I appreciate the 4th of July being on a Friday because that means we get day baseball on a Friday, or I guess kind of late afternoon West Coast baseball, which is kind of almost like normal time East Coast baseball at 5:40 start. But this is a matchup between two teams that came into this season with some postseason aspirations, one of which has a winning record, the other of which is it's there. It's a baseball team that's there. But as of late, the story has been these two teams not scoring a lot of runs. What's up with this Padres offense that is filled with a lot of talented hitters that, it seems like for the most part, they aren't particularly hitting?
I mean, the easiest way to explain it is that the team with runners in scoring position this year ranks 26 in baseball in WRC+. That's kind of the simple way of going about it. And it's just been a lot of guys being down. It's Xander Bogaerts not being worth the contract that he got, right? It is the fact that Jackson Merrill has been in and out of the lineup. Like he's had a couple injuries every now and then. And in general, there's just a lack of slug. Fernando Tatis Jr. looked like the MVP of the league for the first month of the season. And then he kind of forgot how to hit. And it's been really unfortunate and is really fueling the haters, let me tell you. So you've got all that going against them. And then they have the issue of just having the worst catching tandem and probably only the second worst left field tandem in all of baseball. So that's what's really killing them, right? Is that they just have these dark holes and these black holes in their lineup, but then their superstars are not playing to the level to offset it, with some exceptions, right? Manny Machado has been fantastic. We love him very much. Mm-hmm. He is one of the reasons they beat the Phillies, at least one of the games that they beat the Phillies. So slight silver lining there. And then you have Gavin Sheets, who has been like one of the stories in baseball this year, like a truly random, out of nowhere player who, yeah, he's still flawed, right? Like he doesn't do all that great with spin. He's going to get fooled by some stuff. He sells out for power, but it's working enough that he's more than capable of being a solid major league DH. So it's just been one of those things where it's not, the season isn't over like by any stretch. And this is not a team that should sell, right? I don't think that, but it is a team that once again, you're like, what were they? You guys have all those, even with just those stars, you should be fine. And yet here we are. But let me tell you, it seems to not be as nearly as bad as, I'm going to call it the Atlanta Braves effect, because I'm not a fan of rooting for the Braves sometimes. The Atlanta Braves effect is when you have a stacked team and everyone underperforms. And in fact, I could even go further back in history to the Washington Nationals back in, like, I'm going to say 2016 when Brice Harper won his MVP. That was a year in which the entire roster underperformed. And that just seems like what's been going on with the Rangers because, yeah, okay, fine. There's some young guys there. But when you look at that lineup, I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and I look at the offensive numbers, and it's like Marcus Semien is down. Adolis Garcia is down. Jake Berger has been nothing. Jonah Heim's been nothing. Josh Jung has been nothing after showing some promise last year.
Yeah, Josh Jung just got optioned to the minor leagues like this week. Yeah.
And Higgy, my boy Higashioka.
Higgy.
Total mess.
Awful.
Total mess. Might have overperformed for the Padres, they say. That's what many are saying.
You know, I wanted to give Chris Young the benefit of the doubt because I had some doubts about 34-year-old catcher coming off of a career season where he had never hit that many home runs before. I'm like, that seems like a candidate to not hit as good next time. And well, he has a whopping 1 home run in 43 games so far this year. But this Padres team, I felt confident about them being at least a competent team. I was a little concerned about just the depth of that lineup because, I mean, you're right, at the very top end. I mean, you have guys like Machado, who I was a little worried was washed after the last couple of years. Had been like, I mean, not bad, but not Manny Machado. I mean,
the superstar might be gone. You're just like a really good player now. Yeah.
And I mean, Xander Bogaerts, I mean, that's tough. Jackson Merrill is a good player. I mean, Luis Reyes who's batting average king, is hitting only 279. I mean, my goodness, that is just absolutely wild to see. And just the way that they plugged the depth of this lineup, it felt like, and like the depth of the roster, just offensively, it felt like it wasn't there. I mean, I thought Elias Diaz would be better than this, but I mean, you signed Martin Maldonado, who's been probably the worst hitter in baseball for the last half decade or so. That's not exactly going to help. A 41-year-old Yuli Gurriel, that didn't help. Look at the other guy. I mean, Jason Hayward was terrible this year. Tyler Wade has been not good. Jose Iglesias is 35 and it doesn't have any of the magic that he had last season. I mean, just all the way up and down, like the kind of fringes of this roster, I didn't think were quite good enough, but I really did like the Gavin Sheets signing when it happened. Cause I'm like, oh, you get a guy who is a former top prospect who's not even 30 yet. And he was with the most, with the most dysfunctional organization in all of baseball. And you thought, okay, that surely there's more room to improve there. I thought the Rangers would be getting more out of Jake Burger because I thought, oh, well, he came up with the White Sox and then he was with the Marlins, who are also just a disaster. And he's had some issues so far this year. But I want to talk about the pitching staff because the pitching staff for this Padres team has done pretty darn well. Nick Pivetta, a great signing. He has been fantastic. Michael King, whenever he's been healthy, he has been excellent. Stephen Kolek is a guy who had a lot of prospects shine on him. It feels like 87 years ago. But I don't want to talk about those guys. I don't want to talk about Cease. I want to talk about the pitcher that is most peculiar to me on this Padres staff. And it's Randy Vasquez, a guy who somehow, against all odds, have a sub-4 ERA. For quite a while, he had a sub-3.5 ERA. He walks the world. He doesn't strike anybody out. He doesn't get swings and misses. You look at his baseball savant page, it is as blue as the sea. And yet, he's still pitching kind of well. How is this happening? I've watched him pitch, and I'm like, I don't, like, you know, every like fifth day, you're like, oh, I got to watch Skeens. Oh, I got to watch Jacob deGrom pitch. And I'm like, I got to watch Randy Vasquez. I don't understand how he's doing this.
It kind of reminds me of what Cal Quantrill pulled off, former Padres prospect, where like none of the stuff is all that great. He doesn't have the best control. And he sort of kind of is good at limiting hard contact sometimes every now and then. Right. And I think that what's happened is just a confluence of all these things have occurred, but it's not going to continue. This is a guy that doesn't get strikeouts. It was an ongoing bit for my podcast, actually, early on in the season, that he didn't have a single start for a while where he had more strikeouts than walks. Like he always walked more batters than he struck out. And yes, he is able to limit some hard contact, but it just goes to show you that if you can limit hard contact, sometimes you can get away with just a lot of people being able to make contact in general with every pitch. The fact that all the pitches are going into the air, the fact, you know what I mean? Like you can have magical little runs by this, but all the peripherals kind of match it. Right. And I don't think that there's some secret formula. He's got 3.84 ERA, an expected ERA of 5.59. Like it's been coming into play lately, I think as well. So like you're probably, if there's a get right game for this Rangers offense, it could happen here. His last few starts, he's given up 3 runs in 5 innings against the Dodgers. And then he gave up 4 earned runs and on 9 hits against Cincinnati. But even that game, it wasn't Great American Ballpark, so can't hate on him too much. I think he's got some talent. I think he's better suited as a long inning reliever. But the Padres, justifiably, especially with the Michael King and Yu Darvish injuries and Dylan Cease forgetting how to pitch, they're like, you know what? Let's just ride the hot hand as long as we can. Like, even if it's just he's got some Kansas City Chiefs type of devil magic going on, you got to keep riding it. But do not be surprised if you see an Adolis Garcia, another flex. Let's call it a flex bomb that he does. would not be surprised to see that this weekend.
Yeah, I would be very excited to see that. I think my explanation of it, from my understanding and watching of the Padres, is that all of the luck that they would have just to have a normal offensive approach and results with runners in scoring position, all of that good luck has been transferred somehow to Randy Vasquez. And I think if the Padres figure out a way to just give it back to the offense, then maybe things will start to even out a little bit. Coming up, we're talking about this Rangers offense and their offensive problems, this Rangers pitching staff doing a little bit better than anybody expected, and more right after this. This show is brought to you by Game Time. You know, we've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop the closer it gets to showtime. You can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of this endless scrolling to find the best deal? Game Time's zone deals pick the best seats in the section for you. With Game Time, you can see the price, what you pay, exactly as it is. No surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, I am here with Javi Reyes of Locked On Padres, talking about this weekend series, talking about some fireworks or lack thereof that these teams might be providing this weekend. But I want to throw it to you. What do you want to know about this Texas Ranger squad that's heading in to slam what was once known as Slam Diego, but somehow have not hit a Grand Slam home run this year, which feels wild to me.
Yeah, I mean, with the Rangers, I mean, first of all, when you look at some of I don't remember the last time a team went like 0 for 4 with this, with some of their signings, right? Higgy, Jock Peterson, Jake Berger, and probably someone else that I'm forgetting. Like, it's been rough, but let me tell you, man, it's got to be a bizarre world for you guys right now, because heading into the season, like you just mentioned before the break, the question was pitching. Not that it would be a disaster, but people were like, all right, look, like, you know, Max Scherzer is not on this team anymore. You know, Jacob deGrom, I should say, is just coming back from the injury, and all these kind of questions. And there's probably another pitcher that they lost that I'm blanking on. The guy who used to be from Colorado.
Andrew Heaney. Oh, no, John Gray is still here.
He's still there?
He was hurt. He got hurt in spring training. Both he and Cody Bradford, who were supposed to be part of this rotation. Bradford, he was dealing with elbow soreness early on in spring training. He ended up sitting and waiting it out. He was, just about 2 weeks ago or so, seemed like he would be hoping for a July 4th return. Unfortunately, he had a setback and he had UCL internal brace surgery. So he's going to be out for the entirety of the season. John Gray got struck in the wrist and broke his wrist about a week or so before the season was starting. And so the Rangers had Jacob deGrom, who has barely pitched the last 2-3 years because he was coming back from Tommy John surgery, which he had back in 2023. He came back last year and looked pretty solid. Now he was fully back. They also had Nathan Eovaldi, who they just signed to a 3-year deal, or I guess signed again, who has been outstanding. He just came back. He had his second start back after missing about a month with a triceps issue. They signed Tyler Mahle, who was coming off of Tommy John surgery before the 2024 season. He only pitched 3 games there, and he looked mid and bad. And then he was exceptional to start the season, but he's going to be out until August 11th at the earliest, dealing with some rotator cuff injuries. But Jacob deGrom has been the healthiest of the bunch. He has been exceptional. He has been back to basically the best version of himself. Nathan Eovaldi, if he was a league leading qualifier, if he had the innings count, he would be the leader in ERA with a 1.75. And they're also relying a lot on Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker, who we'll both see this weekend. Both guys who were top 3 picks, both out of Vanderbilt, both former teammates. The Mets ended up passing on signing Kumar Rocker when they drafted him 10th overall back in 2021, I believe that was. And so the Rangers ended up getting a shot at him, signed him for a massively underslot deal. And both Rocker and Leiter, I think, have been both better and worse than their numbers. They're guys with tantalizing stuff. And at times, I didn't think either of these guys were quite ready just yet. But when you lose two guys to injury that, at this point we're in July, this is going to be July 4th when you're listening to this, neither of which has pitched at all in Cody Bradford and John Gray. Gray will be back maybe sometime in August. But they also had to sign Patrick Corbin, who was the worst starting pitcher in all of baseball for a half decade. And they did that about a week before the season started because they're like, okay, well, here's our rotation opening day. Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker, Nathan Eovaldi, Jacob deGrom, and this kind of question mark at that point. So Patrick Corbin was the 5 guy at that point. And they talked a lot of talk of like, oh, hey, we see something in his pitch mix. There's something there, that the Nationals weren't doing that we can unlock, the best version of Patrick Corbin. And I'm like, you sure?
Yeah, right.
Is that the same Patrick Corbin that we all saw?
Meatballs for days, man.
Be terrible.
I've gotten texts from players. I have players who have said, dude, hitting off this guy is just batting practice. Like, and he's just been really good for them. And like, I just think this was the best case scenario outcome for the Rangers pitching, it seems like.
Yeah.
And even like with Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker, like at least they're guys that can like somewhat survive at a major league level. Like Kumar Rocker's numbers, like,
rhymes with Lamar.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Kumar Rocker, like his ERA is 6.1, but there's some peripherals that suggest he's pitched a little bit better than that. He's got a decent strikeout rate for such a young player, right? And Jack Leiter, same thing, sort of like. And Nate Eovaldi's kind of one of those players that there's always a later-ish bloomer that no one believes it, and then we're on year 5 of everyone being like, yeah, but still. You know what I mean? Like JD Martinez had this for a little bit.
That was Adolis Garcia, and now everyone's like, actually, he's just bad. I'm like, he was an all-star twice. He is the ALCS MVP. He has the single postseason record for most RBIs in a single postseason.
Yeah, that was
he
fun.
did that.
I remember that. That was true. I still remember that postseason. But
that was incredible.
I look at this Rangers team and I say, this Tyler Mahle, I believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think we were on this podcast like a couple years ago, being like, or maybe not a couple years ago, but heading into last year, I think. And we were like, I kind of like this signing. Like, it just seemed like a decent one. I didn't think he would be, top 10 Cy Young voting or whatever the heck.
Nope. Nobody thought that. Like, not even me at my most optimistic. He's been just really good.
It's just this lineup seems like it is an absolute mess. And like the Jock Peterson thing was a meme for the first month of the season. Like he was almost going to break the Chris Davis record. At one point, for those who don't remember him from the Baltimore Orioles, like he was just so rough. Great. And then you've got Marcus Semien, who he's got a great glove, but he's just
the thing with Semien.
Oh boy,
he had a horrible first 2 months of the season, but since the calendar, since a couple of days before June started, there was a series against the St. Louis Cardinals where he went like 9 of like 13 with like 3 homers in that one series. And since then he's been astounding. Like he has been so darn good. Corey Seager, he had been hurt a couple of times. He dealt with a hamstring issue and dealt with, I believe, actually might have been just multiple times dealing with a hamstring issue this year. And he just like didn't quite look like Corey Seager. He had the longest like stretch of his career where he was just kind of bad. But basically this weekend against Seattle, he hit 3 home runs in 3 games, and then he hit a 4th one in the last game against the Orioles. And so he looks very much back to his old self. I don't think we're going to see Wyatt Langford in this series. He's dealing with an oblique injury. We're going to get Evan Carter back this weekend. Y'all will see him. He missed most of last year with a back issue. He was a top 5 prospect in baseball pretty universally. He was a huge part of that Rangers 2023 World Series run. But last year, I mean, he was 21 years old, and he missed most of the season with a back issue. And like when he came into spring training, he was awful. He didn't make the roster out of camp because he was awful. And so he's learning how to like work around that chronic back condition. This is the second season that he had lost most of the season with a back injury, and he was just 21 years old. Like that's legitimately terrifying. But when he's played, he's been exceptional. He's been dealing back home with a family member passed away this weekend. So he's been on the bereavement list for this week, but he will be back this weekend. And he is a big part of this Rangers offense. And Josh Smith, who I barely talked about, he's been the Rangers' most consistent hitter all year. And he was the Rangers' most consistent hitter last year. And that includes Corey Seager. So this offense has been frustrating. There have been some signs of life. And some drama from a former Ranger, throwing a little bit of shade on them after his retirement, Kevin Pillar, of just saying, "Oh, I thought these guys, I thought I was coming into something different." Just said like, "Oh, these teammates don't really like playing for each other," and I don't know, like they don't this offense, they didn't like winning because they weren't hitting and they weren't appreciating that. I was just like, oh, some shade.
My gosh, our teams really are similar. You got weird drama in the clubhouse, underperforming offense with stars, randomly good pitching from places you didn't expect. It's the exact same team. This is incredible. And by the way, just for the listeners, Brice wasn't kidding. 559 OPS in April for Marcus Semien, 577 in May. In June, 938. And then in July, granted, through just 2 games above 1,000 OPS. So maybe he is turning around. He's been an every other year player sometimes. So here's what I would say, man. The Padres, I do think that I am unfortunately I know what their ceiling is, which is still a team that could compete for a wild card spot, but they're not going to be like that ultimate team unless they get hot at the right time. I can't get rid of the ceiling for the Rangers just from afar. There's too much here and too many players underperforming to a degree that doesn't make sense. Are you going to tell me Adolis Garcia is a 1-0, 110, 108 WRC plus guy? Fine. But like a 60? You're going to tell me that Jock Peterson's a 40? It's too low that I don't believe it. That being said, it has been really bad. So I guess we'll have to see if it changes this weekend.
We will have to see it. We'll talk about this matchup, this weekend's pitching matchup. Some interesting ones for the Rangers and some peculiar arms for this Padres team. We'll talk about all that and more right after this. We are back and talking ball on this holiday weekend, this ball-a-day weekend, if you will. Rangers, Padres, a series between two teams that have struggled to score, but two teams that really just need to keep stacking up wins in, unfortunately, West divisions where the teams we both hate the most just keep on having good seasons despite our whatever jinxes and curses we both tried to place on them. I know I've tried to purchase some voodoo dolls and whatever I'm doing is not working because both these teams are, I don't know if they're quite out of the division race, but they definitely still have some wild card hopes. And I think if either of these teams snuck in to a postseason series, they could definitely be scrappy and go toe-to-toe with just about anybody. But this weekend specifically, we have on Friday, Kumar Rocker versus Randy Vasquez. On Saturday, the pitching matchup is Jack Leiter versus Stephen Kolek. And then on Sunday, Patrick Corbin versus the always dangerous TBD. Just a real wild card, if you will, that TBD. What stands out to you this weekend in the pitching matchup specifically? What is something that you're curious about how either this Padres team will handle these Rangers starters, or what you think this Rangers lineup will do to this Padres pitching staff?
I think the Kumar Rocker start versus Randy Vasquez could be a whole lot of fun. But it could go in any direction because the Padres have historically struggled a lot against guys that they're seeing for the first time. So that could be an event that happens here, obviously, famously getting no hit in a person's major league debut. Shout out Ryan Nelson. Or no, Logan Gilbert? No. Tyler Gilbert. There we go. That start, I'm fascinated by. I think Kolek versus Leiter. The Kolek Kingdom. We haven't talked about Kolek that much, but he has been what the Padres need, and what they need is a sustainable, decent 5 at the back end of the rotation. I think the stuff is there, and the number one thing that he can do, for sure, is he can make you put the ball on the ground. So if that's been a trouble with the Rangers lately, this is absolutely what he's good at doing. He's been a little bit inconsistent. Not even a little bit, majorly inconsistent. If you just look at his past recent games, this is a guy that I still like. Don't get me wrong, and I think that the talent outweighs some of his performances. But last game, 5 2/3, only 1 earned run. Before that, 4 1/3 against the Nationals and gave up 4. Then before that, against the Dodgers, right? Only gave up 3 in 6 innings. That's not bad. It's a quality start. But then he got killed against the D-backs before then. And then before that, he went scoreless, right? And in his debut, or not his debut, but in his second game at Colorado, he went a full 9 innings with 7 strikeouts. Yes, I understand that they're terrible.
I remember that game specifically because the Padres poured on 25 runs. It was the weirdest game, and it was right before they fired Bud Black. Yeah.
And Kolek is definitely a guy that I am because I'm a nerd, like I really am keying in on every start of his, and I'm excited to see how Jack Leiter does. So I think that could be really fun. And the always dangerous TBD. I don't know exactly what they're doing there. Maybe there's a chance they haven't announced it and that someone is going to be back to start in that game. But, they've got Ryan Bergert. They've got someone else that I'm forgetting right now. Matt Waldron, although he just got optioned back to the minors. So it's possible they may just call him back up, right? Like they DFA'd him the other day after his start, mostly because of a roster thing and probably because he was pretty bad in his first start. Granted, it's Philly, so what did you expect? So it could be one of those guys. It could be a piggyback. I don't really know for sure. We'll have to see. We haven't gotten any word on who it might be. All I know is it could be a lot of fun this weekend. Like there's just something about the Rangers and Padres, probably stepping back from the incident in 2020 that makes every single time that these two play like a lot of fun, and Jenny looking forward to it. And the more we talked today, the more I was like, dude, these teams are so similar with like what's been going on. The only difference is that you guys actually won the World Series. So I don't really want to hear any complaining from you anymore. That's basically what I'm saying.
That's fair. And whenever I go on my rant of like, oh my gosh, this team's awful, I hate it. And I'm like, they did just win a World Series like not even 18 months ago.
Mavericks and Cowboys. It's like, yeah, go for it.
Well, no. I don't want to. That's justified complaining. But
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
it's funny looking back at the trajectory of these teams. Like, honestly, that San Diego series, like, it really did send the Rangers on an important trajectory because the Rangers had hopes of contending in 2020 because the season was so short. They were kind of in it really until that series, like because those two back-to-back series of, getting just grand slammed to death by the Padres, they were able to say, okay, this year we do not have it. We do not have it. We're going to just go ahead and go in the tank. And because they were able to start that tank, then in 2021, the following year, the Rangers had the second pick in the draft. You know who they drafted? Jack Leiter. And because they were already in that tank, they were able to tank again. And in 2023, they were able to draft Kumar Rocker. Usually 2022, they were able to draft Kumar Rocker. And then whenever they stunk a little bit more in 2022 and the 2023 draft came around and it was the first year of the lottery, the Rangers lucked into jumping up 4 spots and nabbing Wyatt freaking Langford. Talk about back-to-back home run draft picks of Leiter,
really good stuff.
Rocker, and then Wyatt.
Preller was back Langford there or something. Yeah.
You would think, but I mean, it's easier to draft a lot better. If they were drafting those kinds of guys in the 15, 16 or so range the Padres have been, then maybe we could credit them. But like Jack Leiter, the second best guy of the draft, like, that makes sense.
Yeah, Rocker, that makes sense. Yeah.
Makes sense. Wyatt Langford, they had no business getting that lucky of him falling all the way to them with the 4th pick in that draft. But this is going to be a very fun weekend series. I am very much looking forward to it. Some interesting pitching matchups, some offenses that have some capability for some fireworks. We'll see if we'll get them or if the only fireworks will be the ones shooting off to celebrate America's birthday. But Javi, thank you so much for doing this show with me. Best of luck to your Padres in every game after this series. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.